We just finished riding at Seal Blades, and man, I love this Scott Roxter touring.
Yeah, so do I. And since we bought it a couple months ago, we've had a ton of people ask us how to pick the best mountain bike for their kid, or if we think buying an actual mountain bike is worth the money. To help us answer these questions, we're going to head over to our friend Joe at Holy Roller in downtown Benton. But before we do that, let's get caught up on how we got here. Jeremiah started riding trails this past winter. He quickly fell in love with it, and it wasn't long before his Spider-Man bike was clearly holding him back. So, with very little mountain biking experience, I sought out to find the best bike for the best price, and we made a video about it.
If you haven't seen that video yet, you should go check it out.
Yeah, and we'll tell you about it on our way home. During that video, we performed a little experiment to see if getting his new bike actually improved his speed on the trails, and if so, by how much. We mapped out the most linear path through his 4 favorite trails at Mills Park, timed him riding them, and learned that in just 1 week he cut a minute per mile off his time simply by riding a new bike designed specifically for someone his size riding in the trails through the woods. Now, one thing you should know about me is that I am not all about speed. In fact, I only averaged, 55 miles an hour on the way home. I guess I just didn't get that Ricky Bobby gene.
I want to go fast.
In fact, I'm a firm believer that you can have 90% of the fun, going 60% of the speed, and dramatically reduce your chances of getting hurt. Now, my friends will tell you that's because I'm slow and out of shape, and while they're not completely wrong, it's also partly because when you get hurt, you can't ride as much because you got to heal up, and that defeats the whole purpose for me. But when it comes to Jeremiah, I like to use his speed as a measure of his confidence, and right now in his mountain biking career, confidence is the #1 thing I'm focused on. So we wanted to go back to those same 4 trails that he did last May and see if he's gotten any faster over the summer.
Yeah. Here's a 30-second riding montage.
Good one. Good. There you go. There you go. Back. Yep.
Looking at this data, we can clearly see how much faster he's riding now than he was at the beginning of the summer. My only problem with this is that he took the wrong turn 4 times and inconspicuously stopped to pee in the middle of the walking path once. These breaks cost him an extra 3 minutes and 17 seconds, and if we subtract that from the original time, that means he actually rode it in 31 minutes and 26 seconds. So yeah, he did a whole lot better this time around, and part of that's because he's been riding all the time this summer and just gotten a lot better, and part of it is because he has a lot more room to grow on this type of bike. But what mountain bike is best for your kid, and what things should you consider when you're buying your kid a new mountain bike? Being a millennial, the first place I went was Google. I typed in best kids mountain bikes, and one of the first things I found was a website with this table. This got me nervous, especially because the second one on the list says best bang for your buck, which means whoever wrote this article obviously thought this was a very good price. And yes, while I have friends that have spent multiple thousands of dollars on their own bikes, buying a $1,000 bike for a 7-year-old who's just going to outgrow it in a couple years doesn't seem like the smartest thing to do. Or maybe I'm just a cheapo. Either way, this got me thinking, what makes one bike so much more expensive than another one? But before we dive into that, I felt like this was a good time to set a budget. And I did that by comparing the cost of other things that parents often spend money on for their kids. For example, a new Xbox costs around $300 to $400, and the games cost anywhere between $20 and $60, depending on what kind of game it is. So let's say we bought a brand new Xbox and then a few games to go along with it. You can easily spend $400 or $500 on an Xbox. Some sports are a one-time upfront fee and then costs for uniforms and tournaments and things like that, while others are recurring monthly costs. For example, Ada's dance studio costs approximately $50 a month for a standard class lasting 1 hour per week. So In just 10 months, we've spent $500 on dance classes and got 45 hours of class time. So from these two analogies, I felt pretty comfortable with a budget of about $500. But I'm still not comfortable with what makes one bike better than another one. So to help us answer these questions, let's go talk to our friend Joe at Holy Roller.
Well, that's a 15-minute drive for us. Luckily for you, we know a shortcut.
Oh, wait, we forgot something. This store is way cool. They have bikes, bike parts, more bike parts, merch. They even have skateboards and disc golf stuff too. But the best part of all is their workshop in the back. They build custom frames, wheels, and everything. You name it, they can do it. Hey guys, we're here at Holy Roller. It's a local bike shop in Benton, and I'm with Joe Escobedo, their lead mechanic, and he's going to give us a few tips on what we should look for when we're buying a kid's mountain bike.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Joe, so what's the number one thing we should think about when we're buying a kid's mountain bike?
Number one thing is let's make sure the bike fits, your kid, and you're definitely going to want to have your kid with you to have them sit on the bike and make sure they're not too stretched out riding the bike like Superman, but at the same time their knees aren't coming up all the way to the handlebar, and bike being too small for them.
Even though they might like to be Superman.
Yeah, even though they love to be Superman. We all do.
I like that.
You also want to look at standover clearance. You want to make sure that they're going to have enough clearance, especially mountain biking. When they're standing over the top tube of the bar here, of the bike, making sure they have clearance for them to stand over the bike.
On that note about standover clearance, when they're sitting on the bike, should their feet actually touch the ground if they're actually sitting on the seat, or do you not want them to touch the ground?
No, you don't want them to be able to touch the ground. When they're sitting on the seat, what you want to do is put the pedal all the way at the first position, put their heel on the pedal, and their knee should be locked out when they're in this position.
Okay.
And when they put the front of their foot on the pedal, they're going to have a little bit of bend in their knee, and that's really what you're looking for.
Okay. How about, so I had a mountain bike a while back.
Okay.
And it was from Target, and it was really cheap. And the first, I rode it, about 10 times, and I took it out, had a crash, and my whole derailleur just wanted me, I had to buy a bike.
Right.
So how important is it, do you think, for a kid to get a separated derailleur hanger?
Still really important because a lot of times kids will go and they'll just drop the bike, they're not even thinking about it. I think it's really important to make sure your kid has a derailleur hanger that's replaceable.
Great. So we talked earlier about rim brakes versus disc brakes versus maybe even coaster brakes.
Right.
What do you think would be best for a mountain bike?
So for a mountain bike, if your kid's going to be going out riding some mountain bike trails, they definitely want to have some disc brakes. Disc brakes are great because you can go and they can run through water and mud and the brakes are still going to work. A disc brake, you're actually going to have a disc on here, where a rim brake is actually going to have a caliper sitting here hitting your rim. A rim brake, once you run through any water, your brakes are, your brake power is about 80% shot.
Really?
Yeah, you only have about 20% of brake power once you start running through water and mud and stuff. If you're going to be riding mainly just in your neighborhood or something, then rim brakes are probably the way to go.
So here he has a grip shifter where his hand twists to change the gears. On mine, I think it's called a trigger shifter.
Trigger, yep.
Have you noticed that kids have a harder time with triggers or grips, or that one is better than the other one?
Not necessarily. As long as you're doing some maintenance to the grip shifter, they should be pretty easy to twist. That's the only time, once you start riding and it builds up some dirt and stuff on the bike, you could have a little bit of contamination in the cable area, which will make the grip shifter a little bit harder. But most of these grip shifters are pretty easy to use. And like I said, if you're after a mountain bike ride, if you're just spraying the bike off, getting the dirt off of there, this is going to last you a long time.
Okay. Suspension, we talked briefly about that earlier.
Yep.
But so his is fully rigid.
Right.
Some have some front suspension, some even have full suspension. How important is it for a kid to have suspension, or what type of riding would they need to be doing if they needed suspension?
So they're definitely doing a lot more, I guess, downhill mountain bike trails and stuff. You're definitely going to start looking at some suspension. The size of these tires that are 2.6 are definitely giving you some suspension now. If these were smaller tires, let's say a 2.0, then you probably definitely want to have a fork that has some suspension. Okay. And then as far as having a rear suspension going on, I mean, it's something that's nice to have. You don't necessarily need it.
Right. And so a lot of things we've talked about would add weight. For example, we have the 3 up front, it might be add a little weight.
Yep, that's going to add weight.
Suspension's going to add weight.
Exactly.
I have always had this envision that his bike would be like me trying to ride a dirt bike without an engine.
Right.
Down the trail, which would be just way too heavy.
After this interview, I actually went back and did the math. Jeremiah riding his bike is equivalent to me riding a 101-pound bike. This is something we'll have to explore some more in another video, but for now, Joe makes some good points about it. Check it out.
I wouldn't worry about it too much because at the same time, you know, the kids are also building strength.
Yeah, that's a good
and point. They get used to pushing around this bike. And, you know, later on, if you were to find a bike that was a little bit lighter, they would just, you know, be super thrilled that they're able to climb uphill and everything faster.
Well, thank you, Joe, for being
you.
with us and talking to us about that. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It's good to see you around.
Yeah.
We want to give a sincere thanks to Joe for showing us some tips on things we should look for when we're buying kids mountain bikes, and also a big shout out to Scott for letting us raid his store for a couple hours.
I'm super excited that we have our own bike shop in Benton.
Yeah, so am I, and I'm anxious to see what the future of biking in Benton looks like.
Thanks for watching, and until next time,
We'll see you out there.
I can hear my snapping.
Yeah! And then point at the camera.
Okay.
Cue 30-second riding montage, like you're overexcited. Okay?
Cue 1 second riding mine side.
More.
Cue minutes to ride slide. I can't say that.
Cue the 30-second riding
Cue
montage.
40 second riding mine side.
Yeah.
Cue 1 second what? Cue 30 second riding mine side.
Good job. That was actually really good.